boy. Alright, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby, representing Team Kings of Games. And today I'm actually going to be coming at you guys with a update for Plunder Patrols. This deck is savage, man. Like, this deck is super good. I mean, ever since, like, I got into this deck, it's been so fun for me. I mean, this deck is, like, so good for my playstyle. I mean, mid-range right now has just been the way to go for me for, like, this whole year, practically. I've just been enjoying mid-range decks like Zephyr, Shaddolls, Plunder Patrols, other decks, like, kind of Evil Eye sometimes, not all the time, but then, like, I'm just liking decks that have a control element, but also can combo off and, like, build boards that still can, like, floodgate the meta. That's why I do like Dogmatica Invoke L-Lich and Dogmatica Invoke Generators, and decks like this one, because, like, they have the strengths that, like, combo decks have. But then they also, because they're control decks, you can't side deck against them like you would side deck against a normal combo deck, if that makes sense. So I think that they also inherently don't have the same weaknesses that combo decks have, because like they still have contingencies to fall back on if their main combo gets interrupted. So I love decks like these, and I think Plunder is like one of the best mid-range decks right now in the format. And it is one of the very few decks that can play so many hand traps, it's freaking ridiculous. This deck's engine just can get started so easily. You turn one card to so many. This deck has a huge snowballing in the terms of card advantage. It has big swings in tempo for economy. And it just in general, every element about it for controlling the game. It has some of the best interruptions right now. The ability to just banish cards, monster spells and traps, negations, and the ability to swarm the field and maintain a board and a game state even after getting wiped by Evenly and Lightning Storm. The recovery that you can get just off of like one booty is just ridiculous. This deck's like floaters, everything about it. It's got good starters, it's got good searchers, it's got good recovery, good follow-ups, it's got good interruptions, it's got good durability, and the ability to OTK without playing into Nibiru or needing access code talker is another huge strength. This deck outs random floodgates. Like this deck can just play beatdown without going into the extra deck. You can have 4,500 attack Whitebeards beating over cards like Archlord Christia, Vanity's Fiend. Like, it's just crazy. This deck is like super duper strong. Like, honestly, it's one of those decks that you like, if you're not prepared for it and you don't know how it works, you will get waxed by this deck. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into the list. I've got the cards piles broken down, pretty organized. But let's go ahead and start off with the main ones. You're basically, your pirates. So these are all Blackbeard shipmates, starting off with 3 copies of Whitebeard. Whitebeard is exceptionally strong. He's a floater. He's just, everything about him is good. He can tag out into different attribute ships based on what your opponent has. That's the playstyle of this deck. And he floats, and he's a tuner. He's an amazing card. He's really, really good. And one Whitebeard, given the circumstances, so like this is where one card in this deck just turns into so many, because depending on what attribute your opponent has given you access to, like light is the primary. One Whitebeard can turn into a Least, and Least specials white, and then white basically like can just die. They could just kill Least and white, and you could just still tag into more. What's also like really crucial is when you have white plus white in hand, is like, which is really insane, because you can summon Least off white, use Least to basically negate pitching white for cost, summon a red on resolution, just like summon the white from the field. Like, you just have so much floating, but just like one white by itself, even if you just need to survive, like it puts 2 bodies on field, and then it floats back into a red, and then red can tag into a Mork, and then you can use Mork to disrupt your opponent. Then you search Shipyard, and before you know it, your hand might have started off with just like Whitebeard plus an emblem in hand, but you didn't want to equip the emblem to him. And then your next turn, all of a sudden, like, it's just, everything's different. You have a complete setup. Like, this deck goes off in like half of a turn, not even a whole turn. Just like, you just use your opponent's turn to set you up for your turn, and then you have all these resources to just play with. It's just ridiculous how good this deck is. Like, oh my goodness. Like, it just turns one card into so many. And then we have 3 Redbeards. This is oftentimes the target that you're going to tag into off of white. On your opponent's turn, you have another floater. So in optimal standpoints, you want booty access, so that way when you basically discard white for cost to use one of your ship's effects, separate chain summon red, you can then use booty on resolution or chain booty, or however you want to do it, and then bring white back out, so that way you can get access to the other 2 ships that you're missing. So you can have like the perfect world of Brawn, Moark, and Lease all at the same time, just like popping off. You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. And you're getting so many searches. Like, once you've resolved a Mork or two, you're just so far ahead. It's just flipping ridiculous. Like, that effect is just so busted. So Redbeard, amazing card, and his ability to equip is actually super relevant. Golden Hair is like that. Like, Golden Hair is that card. This card is such an insane extender and follow-up. It has like the most longevity of all the basically out of all like of the Plunder Patrol monsters in the main deck. Golden Hair is the most longevity. Every single flipping turn, you could discard a card and bring this back from the graveyard. And it can even use its in-hand effect to special summon by like sending something from hand or spell a trap zone or field to the graveyard, which is something that doesn't always come up a lot, but when it comes up, it's pretty broken. Like, it's amazing, like, just getting free real estate off of this card. Like, everything about Golden Hair is just so good. This card's just a busted extender. Like, this just makes Almirage just so valuable, and is a tuner as well. Like, Golden Hair is just amazing. And then we play also the 3 copies of Blue. Blue is also an extender, and also at the same time, when you have extra copies of dead cards like an Extra Desires or a Gamma that you can no longer use, you could trade it out for a better card. This plus black, having access to black and blue every turn gets you 2 extra draws on top of your draw for turn, so you can dig deeper for hand traps and Plunder Patrol cards if you haven't seen them. So Blackbeard and Bluebeard are really good for filtering when you haven't seen an optimal hand. But after that, they can sack into your side deck cards or into just like blowout cards like Nibiru, which is like super duper impactful. The fact that you can trigger these every turn. And granted, the circumstances with Blackbeard, how you want to use him is you try to target every monster but him. Because as long as you leave him on field, you just keep generating that +1 every single time. Summon a ship. It's really like a +2 to 3. Because you summon a ship, you draw, then that ship discards to search something and trigger something in grave. And then whatever you search can be used right then or there. Or the next turn, which is like super busted. So like the beards just get you so much advantage. Red, white, black, and blue. Golden Hair is just, she's a standalone card. She's the newest Plunder Patrol. But anyways, that's going to round up the Plunder monsters. Obviously, you just max out on all of them. No PKs, none of that. I love pure Plunders. As is, like, this archetype is just super strong. You really don't need to fix what ain't broke. So let's go ahead and get into the power plays. So starting off with triple Desires. Especially because I don't play exactly 40 in this list. Desires is a bit stronger. Because there's a lower probability of, like, banishing one of, like, you know, your Cypher and Gear Driver. Or banishing too many copies of the same card. Desires is just a necessary +1 in this deck, which is super important because when you haven't seen Plunder cards or you only have 1 Plunder card, it's really hard to play. You need like 2 Plunder cards, like you need something to commit to field and something to have in hand to discard for cost. Because of that, your hands can be situational where you need like extra Plunder cards, and this card is really, really valuable because it not only lets you draw 2, but it can potentially let you see literally 2 Plunder cards. And the best cards to draw in this deck are just cards that say Plunder Patrol in their name. Next up, 3 copies of Shipyard. Shipyard is really, really powerful. This card is super good at going second. It's a super busted card. Like this card, inherently, people will have negators that don't negate the activation or effect, but just the activation. And they'll be forced to negate the activation of this. Not forced, but they'll just want to. Because like when you play against Yu-Gi-Oh players, they don't like you like searching cards. They don't like you adding cards to your hand at all. So they like negating cards like Extravagance and Desires and this card. And what's so busted is they'll negate the activation, and you can use the graveyard effect to either force a second negate, or it'll just resolve and you can just activate it again and you can just use this effect. This card is why Access Code Talker is not necessary, because you just play Beatdown with like all your ships. You will have, no exaggeration, you'll have Elise at like 4,500 attack, 5,000 attack. It's just crazy how big your cards get. Like the follow-up OTKs in this deck are crazy. And granted, how it sometimes starts, it'll just be like normal summon Redbeard with the Whitebeard in hand. Tag out into Lease on your opponent's turn because they have a light attribute. Discard the Whitebeard for cost to negate. Search for a Shipyard, Separate Chain Whitebeard, float into like a Golden Hair. Like it's just so busted. And on resolution, like use Lease to summon out red, and you have like a huge field presence. Follow-ups in like a Shipyard that just is just ready for you next turn. It's just crazy. And then I do like play the 1 Optimus Prime because Shipyard's super important. Next up, a card that I think a lot of people truly do underestimate for the ratios and how good it is 3 Ship Shipping. This card's graveyard effect is super duper impressive because like what I do oftentimes is I equip my Whitebeards and use cards like Shipyard to bounce it back to my hand. so that I can like indirectly search my Whitebeard even without drawing the Whitebeard. Also on activation, this card like forces negates out, which is super good. If you see an Arclight, just normal Whitebeard and attack over it. Main phase 2, activate this, fuse with Whitebeard from field and 1 card from hand. Go into your lease, and the thing is, if they negate this, the beauty is you can use the graveyard effect, which like they normally have to, because like you summon a lease with chain blocking effects. Then you just use the graveyard effect, and you equip an emblem. Then you use emblem, and that forces another negate out. And then you could just use an extender like Bluebeard, special him, and then you can just go into your white Aura Well, because you're not locked out to Plunders yet, and then just nuke their attack position monsters, and then resolve white and blue in chain block with those. It's like super busted. So this card inherently, it can bait 2 negates by itself given certain circumstances. Because like Emblem, even if they don't negate the graveyard effect, Emblem will forcibly summon a lease unless they negate the effect of it. And they have to have something that negates the effect and not the activation, because this directly equips it, so they're going to miss their time to negate the activation of Emblem. So shipping, like, don't underestimate how powerful this card is. I've always played 3 of this ever since the newer support came out. As well as 3 emblems. This card is super good. This card is gas. Like, Emblem's busted. It's so good. Like, it's so good. Targeting protection on top of that is really, 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 really good. And then we have 2 copies of Booty. I cut down from 3 to 2. I just don't want to play 1 because I'm scared of it being banished by Desires. And then I've had duels where my Booty ended up getting destroyed because like my opponent cleared my entire field, and then it killed itself by its own effect because like I didn't have Plunders left on the field, which like really, really sucks. So now moving forward to the next portion of the deck, which is the portion that is like the most relevant for the meta, because like, these decks are flipping crazy. Given the circumstances, I have shown you guys multiple videos on my channel of Plunder Patrols being able to crack through triple Omni Negate. Like 3 Spell Trap or Monster Negates that negate anything, plus like Arclight being one of them. Just like a super strong floodgate against this deck. But still, because people will lock you out of your extra deck or just discard your entire hand with like an Arclight up on the field, so then Whitebeard won't float and stuff like that. You won't get like their best effects. Unless like they discard shipping and you like top deck a Plunder and like a miraculous play happens. Like it's just very, very low probability of being able to win without hand traps. This portion of the deck is just super duper vital, because this deck can play a high count of hand traps and use like a lot of impactful follow-ups, because hand traps are only as good as your follow-ups, but this deck has really good follow-ups because it can snowball so fast. So we're playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom Enjoy Spring, the most generically applicable hand trap that's good in like every matchup. And then these are the high impact ones. We play 3 copies of Nib, 3 copies of Gamma, and then the Driver. What I love about Gamma and Driver in this deck is you have really powerful cards that you can activate that you still don't have monsters yet, and those will force negates, and you can just reveal Gamma. And Gamma also is a light attribute, which is really important for your emblem. Nib is also important because it's a light attribute, and these put themselves on the field, which allows you to go into like Blackbeard and still use a card like Emblem to cheat out release, even if your opponent didn't leave a light attribute for you. So these are like super duper good. And when you resolve Gamma on your turn, when you use Gamma to negate a negator, you can synchro with Gamma and the Driver. And like go ahead and show you. Brawn is a generic synchro. It just requires a tuner and a non-tuner. So like there's no stipulations on that. The same with Adamancipator Risen Drageye. It just requires a tuner and a non-tuner. The only one that's situational is White Order because you need like waters. But you can summon Drageye and Brawn with Gamma and Driver. And Drageye can be pretty good in this deck because you can also sack Nibiru's off the top of your 5 when you use this effect. Which I use it just because I can see a Nibiru in the deck. So I'm like, why not give it a shot? So Gamma's like really good in this deck. And then I do play double Veiler and double Ogre. Which is like still just super duper important to have like multiple hand traps. And the light attributes ones are good because the best ship to summon is going to be Lease. You can go Blackbeard first just to get a free draw, but Lease is always going to be the best one because Lease maintains the game state. Lease is just like a monster negate that searches any Plunder card, and it can allow you to just swarm the field to keep your critical mass going, make sure that your board doesn't get broken. The final hand trap is going to be the 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, which is like still really good in this deck. And then a pseudo hand trap, I just play the one of Call By because Ash Blossom can really hurt this deck. Your ships all have effects that either search or draw, so Ash Blossom can negate the entire effect. So like it's still important to like main deck Call By. But for the terms of hand traps, I'm playing 3, 6, 9, 12, 14, 16 hand traps, which I feel is like a really, really strong amount where I have a high probability of seeing like 2 hand traps every opening game, especially whether I play 40 or not. I play 45 and I still have the same, like a high probability. Call by, I think even though it's at 1, you shouldn't just like not play it because it's really, really important. Like my experience as a Plunder player, running into Ash Blossom, it can just screw up your entire setup. Like it's that serious. Now for the extra deck, we play 2 of each Plunders. We play 2 Blackbeards, 2 Lees, 2 Bronze, and 2 Morgs. If you know what you're doing and you're properly summoning these and not just cheating them out with the effects that's special from extra deck, then you're doing it correctly and you don't have to worry about playing more. If you're like trigger happy and you just use the swarm effects too much and don't properly summon these, you have to resort to using booty to actually recycle these and then use a second effect to special to summon them back out and they're still not properly summoned. But what I've learned and experienced with this deck is if you properly summon at least 1 of each of these, you can just recycle them off booty by literally special summoning them from your graveyard off of booty, and that turns into a huge tempo swing. Like summoning black off booty just turns into like a lot of resources because you've already picked whatever attribute you want, which means he has free reign to just target whatever you want and basically just tag out into the next best ship. Something else that you can do in this deck is you can play Noodle, Halki Fibrax, and the Destruction Sword, the Buster Lock. And what you can do is basically, let me just grab the Buster Lock card real quick. What you do is, like, let's say you have Whitebeard plus an extender. You use Whitebeard and the extender to go on Noodle. You chain block correctly so that White resolves last, so that way you're not locking yourself out to only Plunders. So you go White chainlink 1, Noodle chainlink 2, so Noodle resolves first. You summon this card out, then you use White to summon out Golden Hair, for example. Link Golden Hair and the Noodle into the Blackbeard. And then you can basically, even if you don't use any other effects, you can use Blackbeard to target this that was summoned from your deck off Halki Fibrax, and then tag it into any ship. And what that's going to do is, because this is equipped to a monster, it's going to put your opponent under the Buster Lock. So this is a really cool card to side deck when you know that you're going first for sure. And you can play Noodle in this deck to get a Buster Lock turn 1, which is like super impactful. It's something that you can do. Just keep that in mind. And then I play Abyss Dweller, Bahamut Shark, and Totally Awesome. These cards do come up, and it's really important to have access to these. This is why I didn't like back in the day the variant that played O-Line, because they played so many extra deck slots just for the Halki Fibrax combo. They lost a lot of high impact utility cards like Dweller, Bahamut Shark, Toad, Omni Negate, Totally Awesome, plus a follow-up because it gets a Plunder card to your hand that can be a discard fodder for your next ship. Dweller's just busted. And then a card like Dragite, Spell or Trap Negate to counter Evenly and Lightning Storm, which your boards can be a little bit fragile to. It's always nice to make cards like these with Golden Hair or Whitebeard so that you can still summon a Blackbeard and have access to your Plunder Patrol ships like Lease, plus like the Dragite and the Toads. Like when you have a combo of like Golden Hair plus Bluebeard, you can overlay both of them into Bahamut, detach the Golden Hair to summon the Toad, and then use Golden Hair's graveyard effect, special it, use her and the Bahamut Shark to go into Blackbeard, and you have Blackbeard Toad. So you can do this turn 1, which is like super duper impactful. And then White Orwell, when like decks get punished when they don't play around Lightning Storm, you can summon this chain blocking, where this is chainlink 1 and they can't negate it unless they have Imperm Veiler or Knighted, and you'll be able to destroy all their attack position monsters, attack all their monsters that were playing around Lightning Storm, and then you can make a follow-up Blackbeard after that. This card's just super impactful, and it floats. It's just so good. And then we play Almirage, and then for Link 2, I like Union Carrier. Like, it just really helps this deck out. And also, keep in mind that because Moarg is a dark attribute, you can even do the Buster Lock off Union Carrier targeting Moarg. And since Moarg is already going to be indestructible twice, and you can equip it with Emblem to make it untargetable, that's going to be an even stronger Buster Lock, you know what I mean? So that's going to be it for the main and the extra deck. That's the profile. As far as siding, I would recommend Kaiju, Slumber, 3 Kaijus that are Fire, Light, and also Dark, and then Pinkertops, like the Buster Lock. I would recommend side decking cards like Droll and Lockbird, Evenly, or Lightning Storm, whichever one you have. And then, like, for when you go first, just throw in the Buster Lock. So you don't really need a side for going first, just throw in the Buster Lock. You already can make boards that counter, like some of the best blowout cards. But if you're scared of Dark Ruler or Evenly, you can also throw in a Pointer of the Red Lotus. You have like 4 going first cards, and then you have 11 slots for going second against combo or back row. I recommend side more for control and back row because you already main deck 16 hand traps for combo. So your side deck should be more focused on like control decks. So I feel like the 6 kaiju slots should be that should be it, and then like dedicate the rest for like back row and control decks. So you should do like 3 Evenly, 3 Lightning Storm, Pankratops, Reboot, and Feather Duster. Those 9 cards are like blowouts for back row, and then like the 6 kaiju, the kaiju package. Maybe cut down on the one of the slumbers, do like 2 slumbers, and then throw in the Buster Lock, or you can main the Buster. It's up to you. Just food for thought in case anybody wanted to have like had questions on the side deck. But that's pretty much it, you guys. This is Plunders for this format. Great deck, great choice. Fairly budget. As you guys can see, nothing in the extra deck is like crazy expensive. In fact, everything about this deck is pretty much budget. And as you guys can see, I don't really play like super expensive. I guess if you consider Imperm to be like that expensive. I feel like a card is expensive when it starts to hit like $50 plus.